I wanna pivot into rapid
scared.
fire questions because this you should be, Ben, because we got a real doozy for you. We got a couple.
Hi folks, excited to introduce you to this week's episode. Melanie and I sit down with Ben Sesser. He's the CEO and co-founder of BrightHire, an AI-enabled talent platform. And we discuss, not surprisingly, all things talent, all things hiring. Are the bots coming for all of our future hiring roles? Really like what the best way is to conduct an interview. Get some really interesting insights there. So just ended up being a fascinating conversation. Please do subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. While I've got you, this podcast is sponsored by Athena, the company Melanie and I work for. Athena provides a modern compliance training and HR compliance solution. Please do check Athena out.
Ben, I am so excited to be chatting with you today. We're talking with Ben Sesser, CEO and co-founder at BrightHire. And Roxanne and I found you actually because you are so prolific on LinkedIn, which is something
Which is
I
not
know.
an insult, just to clarify.
Oh no, Roxanne,
Yeah.
Roxanne loves this. Roxanne can't stop posting, and Roxanne forced me to post early on when I joined Athena, and now here we are, all these years later, just constantly posting. And so we were really engaged with your posts, and in particular, loved you had some really great recruiting insights, which we will get into. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. What else should we know about you? What else should we know about BrightHire?
Where to begin? Mostly on the BrightHire side. So I'm
Great.
the co-founder and CEO of BrightHire. We are an AI platform for hiring used by 600 companies globally. I co-founded the business with my partner, Teddy, about 6 years ago. Our fun fact is that we've known each other since we were in kindergarten. It's not why we started a company together, but certainly makes life easier. And I've been in tech since 2011, and I love it. And it's been a joy building BrightHire, and I've been in and around the people in HR space like my whole career in different ways, and I think a lot of those experiences came together to build what we're building now.
I love that. I think that's really important because I find where a lot of people go wrong is that they lose that assumption of good intent and resentment starts to
Yeah,
build. I was talking to someone actually about you the other day, Roxanne. I was talking to a friend of mine,
All
and
good things, I'm sure.
all good things. And I actually was really fascinated
it
because
was
I was
about the good
describing.
intent. Yeah.
It was about the good intent. It
Yeah,
was
I'm
about
sure
the
she
good
means
intent.
well, but what she said was bananas. Yeah.
No, but genuinely, so I was describing this moment that to me felt like nothing, like felt like, yeah, no big deal. And my friend was like,
Okay,
did you get
but now,
annoyed?
Melanie, you have to tell us what it was.
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
It was a little while back. We were talking about like the AI thing, and when we were first talking about AI, you would like send me articles all the time, and you would be like, "See, this is why we need AI, and this is why we need to so on and so forth." And like for me, it didn't bother me at all. I was like, "Yeah, thanks for like taking the time, sending me the article, and like you're interested in this. I'm interested in this as well because you're interested." Blah blah. And my friend was like, "Didn't that feel like overbearing? Didn't that feel like micromanaging?" And I was like, no, like Roxanne's excited about a thing. I feel very privileged that she feels comfortable sharing that thing with me. Like it didn't bother me, but I could see a different personality. Apparently, my friend's personality would have been like, "Back off! I heard your message. Why you keep sending me all these articles?" So, I just think it's very interesting thinking about how important it is to find complementary personalities because just a slightly different perspective, and I would have been annoyed by that, you know.
I'm like,
So.
I sent like at least 4 articles to people at BrightHire today. So
I
feel
hopefully,
like it's also like
It's that CEO energy. Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like this would be a good maybe start to a rapid fire section
Yes.
because so I feel like my like catchphrase at the company is like I listen to a podcast and and then it's like I send the podcast and I'm like and I think you should totally rethink the way we're doing sales or whatever like
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm curious like if you do it and what your why behind it is. I do it because I just get inspired and it all goes into like a cauldron, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm like stop everything and do this. Or Melanie, to your friend's point, I wasn't trying to send you a subliminal message like, and I think you're being really resistant to AI, and if you don't get on the train, we're gonna, like I was just like, this is interesting. But like, do you think that like CEOs have a little bit of that personality type of call it like ready, fire, aim? And do you think there's like any misunderstandings that happen there?
Yeah. I mean, my intent's usually, this is like a pretty interesting piece of information that's relevant, and so it's just like knowledge management. It's like knowledge sharing is kind of the intent. So one of the articles I sent today is kind of like I think like a product strategy article from somebody who writes about like AI products and product strategy. So I sent it to our leaders on the product side.
Do you think it's a misunderstood thing that like a CEO might say to like, because it can sometimes be annoying if you're like, I'm the CMO, I know marketing. Why are you sending me a podcast that has like some pretty basic information on SEO? Like, do you think that's like can be a friction point, or like to people leaders, if I'm like to Melanie, like I feel like a while ago, I was like, I
Oh
heard this
my
thing
God.
that was revolutionary to me. And I think it was something Melanie had proposed to me 6 months before and I'd shot down and I just didn't remember and whatever. Like, do you see that often being like a friction point?
There's like a big culture of article sharing and kind of knowledge sharing at the company. So try to like blend in with that, particularly on like the technology side. Someone's always sharing like a research study about a new foundational model or something that we can learn and take back and improve what we're doing. So yeah, I can certainly see in certain contexts that would be not go over well, but I don't do it all the time. I try to keep the bar kind of high for, okay, this is because I also recognize that everyone's busy. Everyone's got 1,000 things going on. And, they may feel some obligation to read the thing that I'm sending them. And so I'm kind of sending it to them because I'm like,
Reply and yeah.
I actually think that you should take a look at this. I'm not expecting you to reply and tell me what your interpretation is, but like, this is going to be legitimately valuable for you to take a look at.
I think that the communication and relationship building piece is really important because Roxanne, part of what has never bothered me about this is Roxanne has always had a couple of things that she's been very upfront about, which is like strong convictions, loosely held. I'm sharing a bunch of things. Doesn't mean that all of them are important. Please tell me to shut up if this is not important. And as we build that relationship, I think at one point, Roxanne, you were sending me some articles and I was like, this is like gonna blow up into such a whole thing. We're just gonna talk about it at the next podcast interview, Roxanne. We'll talk about it then. And like I felt very comfortable just
Yeah.
being like, thank you for sending. I got other things on my list right now. Unless you're telling me this is a priority, we'll talk about it at the next podcast. It'll be a great interview topic.
Which is ideal. You want people who can prioritize and not like I at least I appreciate, I don't know if you've been noticing like the like effective pushback. Not even just with articles, but like I have my favorite example recently was a woman who reports to me who is like, I think you're getting distracted. And I was like, what a gift to just have someone
Yeah.
who's like,
Yeah.
you are following not the main point right now. And like, I need you to come back over here. Like, I think that's like pretty magical, but I feel like there's often this perception of like, what is it like managing up, which I've never exactly understood what it's supposed to mean, but that you're a little bit more like, great point, Ben, building on that, instead of like, Ben, I
Yeah.
think you're wrong.
I wanna pivot into
I'm
rapid
scared.
fire questions because you should be, Ben, because we got a real doozy for you. We got a couple. All right. So again, these are unscripted because we want your knee-jerk reaction. All right. All right. So first question. I'm setting the scene. Your company, BrightHire, is hit with a PR nightmare. Someone posts about a terrible experience that they had with your company, and the post goes viral with thousands of people piling on. What do you do?
Great question. First is like, what happened? Fact finding. Like, what actually happened? What's fact? What's fiction? What's getting stirred up to because people like to stir the pot and jump pile on. So first we got to
Oh,
figure out
they
what's
sure
going
do.
on.
Yep.
Second, we gotta understand like where did this start, and then generally a good idea is to own your mistakes pretty up. Like there's no deflection, there's no explanation. You
Okay, so
just
you
gotta
don't
own.
ignore it. You don't like wait for it to go away, and hopefully it just dies down because it's social media. Who cares? They'll forget about it tomorrow.
Uh, there's it's very situationally specific, and I know
Okay.
that's not as like fun of an answer,
Yeah.
but what are
No
we
worries.
actually talking about here?
Yeah.
Again, how much is fact, how much is fiction, and then how productive do we think it's going to be based on that to just step in and kind of formally communicate. If it's a legitimate thing that we did that where we are at fault for, we're going to own that kind of 100% of the time. If it's some crazy thread that's like this made up story on the corner of the internet, maybe it's helpful to weigh in, maybe it's not. Obviously we're not going to take culpability for something if it's manufactured, so I don't want to go in and explain it away, and so in that case it might make sense not to jump in. But if there's an opportunity for us to own something, and be upfront about that to the extent that we didn't live up to our obligations or we made a mistake, then we should be doing that.
And what would that look like for you? Like when you say we, would it be like the anonymous BrightHire LinkedIn account? Would it be you
Mhm.
as CEO? Like
It'd
who
be
is
me.
saying what? It'd be you. Okay.
No, I
Okay.
mean, yeah,
Yeah.
you're the CEO of the company. You got to own it for better or worse. So
Okay.
nobody really,
Okay.
nobody wants to hear from anonymous bright hire. You gotta, you gotta stand behind your business one way or the other.
Yeah, Ben, I think I largely agree. I'm trying to find some area of disagreement just because that's always more interesting. But I definitely agree that like anonymous and sanitized company statement is like, get out of here. Like, while we neither acknowledge nor deny the claims, we also are standing true to our values. And you're just like, what?
Yep.
No, it's not.
Yep.
That did not say words. I think it's like super. I think that sometimes CEOs are, and I think it becomes really different if it's like a public company. Then you do have to like sort of have some like decisions by committee. But I think that can just really sanitize. And I think that there's, I don't know if it's like a new way or what, but of people really appreciating like authenticity. For some reason, I'm thinking back to, I think it was like all the tech riffs, and I remember I want to say Stripe CEO came out and was just like, I'm messed up. Like I overhired and like there's no one else to blame. And, I think his statement was sort of like given as a kind of somewhat rare example of a CEO just owning it. And it was like publicly received quite well versus others who kind of tried to do more of the deflect. So like, yeah, I think in general, like if there's a there to it, really owning it. Maybe this was not when we were going to do, but I feel like because it has to do with hiring and a very small LinkedIn kerfuffle, Ben, I'm curious your perspective here. I feel like my most recent example of like getting a little CEO anger was I was walking on my walking treadmill during an interview. She can tell me it's the worst possible thing that a human can do. It's like a walking treadmill, so don't envision that I'm like, jogging and whatever, but it is absolutely like a walking treadmill. And I acknowledged it at the beginning of the interview and whatever. And we got a scathing Glassdoor review that Melanie decided the live podcast would be a good place to share this. I'm kind of curious in that example, if you think like CEOs kind of taking heat for something they did personally, you think there's more to the story, or there's more to the story, but also like you're gonna put down whatever. Like thoughts there, like coach me during that one. Let's say I'm like, Ben, everyone's yelling at me on LinkedIn. What do I do?
Again, it's probably not going to be very productive for you to sort of substantiate or bring your perspective to the table. Like if the
Yeah.
objective is to move on, then the best route there is to say, kind of just own it, even if you maybe don't feel like it was, the world's worst thing that you did. It's probably going to be a simpler situation, which is ultimately probably what we're going for, because you have a business to run and you're trying to, create value for your team and for your investors and for the market. And if you're spurning lots of cycles, going back and forth on something, it's not going to be, that's not that runs counter to that objective. So I would probably just say, you know, hey, we're all people, and there's always opportunities to learn, and appreciate your feedback, and we're going to continue to do better.
I want to dig in there because I both see and applaud you taking the high road here. And also, I think sometimes I look at the things Roxanne has to like endure or that people say to Roxanne. I'm like, that was rough, man. That I posted the same thing and nobody said a word. But somehow everybody hates it when you say it. I know people talk a lot about sort of like the lonely, villainized CEOs, and some people are like, it's real, and some people are like, ah, shut up, they're CEOs. We don't need to care about them. What's your take, Ben? Is this like a real problem, and people need to have more empathy towards CEOs, or do CEOs need to just like stop whining and get over it?
CEOs shouldn't whine. Generally it's like it's like your chosen profession. I'm trying to think of an example where
Yeah,
it's not,
yeah.
but it's like by and large, it's like a choice. It's That can be true, and it can be an incredibly lonely and hard job, and both those things can be true at the same time. Like it is there, there's a lot of responsibility. You feel stress all day long, 24 hours a day. It impacts your relationship with your family. I think that's it's like almost impossible for that not to be the case, depending on what stage your business is. But I think in general, so all of those things can be true, and it's a choice. Like you chose to start a company, or you chose to be the CEO, and that's there are a lot of worse jobs in the world than being the CEO and building interesting things. And being in that position. So I think that, both things can be true at the same time.
If you can't take the heat, stay out of the C-suite. I don't know if that
I
flow
don't know.
rhymes,
That,
but
you
yeah.
know, you tried. You
It did.
tried.
That did rhyme.
I
I
don't
got
know.
horseshoes and hand grenades, Melanie.
You're being a little nicer than me, Ben. I don't know if you quite stuck the landing there, but you tried. So
That did rhyme. I don't know. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it did rhyme,
okay,
Melanie.
okay. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I just thought
Uh,
the cadence was off, but
I'm a hip
whatever.
hop fan, and there's
Yeah.
like a lot of wordplay and syllable play, and a lot of things can rhyme that
Mm.
you don't think
All
that can
right.
rhyme, but they
All
do rhyme.
right.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
take it
Ben,
back.
thanks. It's really nice to have an advocate here on this.
Ben, I love you taking the high road. Have you ever taken the low road? Have you ever messed up? Do you have any CEO moments that you regret where you're like, oof, I did not, that is not the version of me that I wanted to be today?
Yeah. Let me think about yesterday. I think it's always good to let me like
Great.
take a small sample
Yes.
size. Yeah, we had like I'll say like, a lot of it's just communication, and I'd say like a big thing is really remembering that you are a CEO, and that, you know, one of the things I'd say in terms of how I operate is, I'm a servant leader. My hands are dirty. I'm doing the actual work, and I'm just trying to, be helpful and productive. And at the same time, you have to remember that you're the CEO, you're the founder, and so everything you say and do has like a bigger gravity than what you are realizing all the time. And you kind of switch seats and remember, like, I remember working for CEOs or working in a company, and someone senior says something and you like, it means a lot. Like the weight of the words are really large. And I would say a failure mode for me is kind of operating as a doer, being in the trenches, and just like almost like I don't think of myself as like different or, above the rest of the team. And maybe part of that is sometimes losing that, like, I could say something off the cuff, or I could just like be a little unvarnished, but that's the CEO and founder saying that. And so the perception associated with it's going to be a little bit different. Now, look, we have high degrees of trust, and I've worked with a lot of people in the company for so long that I think like it doesn't really matter that much because they've operated with me for a while. They know my intentions. We know each other extremely well. But certainly as new people join the organization or as the organization scales, that becomes like a bigger and more important thing to not screw up. And so I was in a meeting yesterday and kind of trying to underscore a point around something that we're doing, and probably got like a little fired up about it. That is part of my personality as well. Like in a, not in like a mean way, but in a like a let's go, let's LFG guys, we got to get this
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
And so
LFG, Roxanne uses that all the time.
Never heard it. Yeah.
So
What? Yeah.
there's probably a more subdued version of delivering that message that probably would have landed, but we are who we are
Honestly,
sometimes.
even on the HR side, I really relate to that. The other day, I put time on someone's calendar because I just thought it would be faster to drop 15 on their calendar than to like go back and forth on Slack. And they immediately messaged me like to ask if they were in trouble or their job was at risk. And I was like, what? What? Because I'm the head of HR. Why would the head of HR randomly, without
By the way,
notice, put 15
the
minutes?
hairs of my arms stood up when you said that. When you said that you put 15 minutes on the calendar, I immediately got like, the back of my hairs on the back of my neck stood up. So yeah.
I forget I'm HR and I'm scary, even though I try not to be. Yeah, so it's really relatable.
Last night I was slacking someone and I said, I need you to pull out of the tactics and just think strategically for a minute. And I meant it in the context of like, I'm about to give you some like abstract thing that I don't expect you to do right now. But I then realized I read it and I was like, oh, that could super sound like I'm like, why are you always in the weeds? And and it's like,
Yeah.
I think it is difficult because I feel like leaders, want to move quickly and like, I know my intent. But I think that that's why I've always appreciated, and I'm not sure if you've ever found a way to like hire for this, but like people who will kind of like, but Melanie gave the example at the beginning, assume positive intent. Cause it's like, yeah, it is my job to like go back and be like, just to clarify, you are not like falling short in any way. I just wanted to give you the context of like, this is like different than all the little tiny things I've told to you. But like, have you ever found, your company is like, in the talent hiring space, like, is there a good way to hire for like, will you be someone who just like assumes positive intent?
Yeah, I think there's one way to do it is to kind of do past situational questions. And so, an example would be like, can you tell me about a time where, you maybe had conflict or a disagreement with somebody and how you handled that? And if you dig, you can kind of try to understand like how did they perceive the situation? What was their default mode in that situation? And so I think there's like situational questions that you can ask that
Yeah.
would sort of get to it by just like honestly just digging into something actual that they've actually experienced and kind of unpacking how they operated in that kind of scenario versus a hypothetical where it's honestly probably not going to tell you a heck of a lot around, what their default mode is for something like that.
I asked in my founder interview something to the effect of like, tell me about a leader you really admired. And to your point, it's not a hypothetical. Like, I want, they don't have to tell me who it is, but like, tell me it was, a VP or whatever. And then tell me about someone who fell short. And I'm often like really just listening for when it's like someone who fell short. Is it kind of the like, man, leadership was so incompetent here. Like my boss had such unrealistic
Yeah.
expectations, or something where it's like, I don't know your boss. And maybe they were the worst. But often like it's like, usually there's like a little more to the story. And I'm just curious if that like if you think that's a good approach of kind of trying to understand like how does someone critique their past leadership? Because I often think that that's exactly how that it will critique us if they join.
Yeah. Yeah. It also tells you something about, again, depending on the altitude of the role, agency and, kind of taking ownership. So, look, there are times where somebody has agency and takes ownership, and it's very evident from the actions they've taken. Like, um, they saw a problem, they identified it, they tried to do something about it, they created solutions, and then maybe truly like the leadership team was like uninterested in
Totally.
solving that
Yeah.
problem.
I
But
was in
what you
the
want to
army.
hear
I've,
is
I've seen that. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
it's like,
what you want to hear, but you want to hear like they saw a problem, they
I
scoped it,
tried.
they came up with a recommendation. I tried, not like
Totally.
we kept zigging, and I just we should have zagged. And like, did you do anything about it? Did you say
Yeah.
something? Did you like call
Yeah.
that out? Or like, no, and you're like, okay, well, we're not in the we're not in the just like follow instructions business at this juncture at BrightHire. We're like in the we're like cutting a path through the forest, and so everyone's got to have their maps and machetes out and like be coming up with solutions and paths forward, and without being handed the answer. So yeah.
Yeah, I like asking tell me about like a manager that made you feel undervalued and like what about
Hmm.
it made you feel undervalued because I find that like the things that people value that's critical for me
Mm.
if they felt
Mm.
undervalued because the manager I don't know wasn't giving
Sent too
them
many podcasts.
sent too many podcasts, so it felt micromanaging, or the manager didn't give them, positive feedback on, everything that they did, right? Like, realistically, I'm not going to give you positive feedback on everything that you did. I don't have time, but I'll talk to you about it in our one-on-one. So like, I find that to be really helpful for me to determine if there's going to be a mismatch. Because I find sometimes if you ask too direct of a question, they give you the question that they think you want to hear. And so if I can ask sort of like a slightly adjacent question and then I can, analyze that for the things that I need, I've
Mm.
found that to be pretty helpful. Okay, I've got one more rapid fire question for you, and then Roxanne might jump in with one as well. It's also recruiting related. All right, so you're interviewing a candidate for your new people leader. Okay, 5 minutes in, you already know it's a no, it's a pass. What did they do wrong?
Sheesh.
They
I
were
thought you
on
were
a
gonna
walking
ask like
treadmill.
I thought you were gonna ask if I would end the interview.
Oh,
I was
would you
actually, when
end the
Melanie gave
interview?
me that prep question, that was actually okay. Okay, so maybe answer both because I have
Yeah.
heard
I
of
didn't.
CEOs who do this, and I'm
I don't.
curious.
Yeah. I
Okay, I
mean,
don't
I
either.
don't. Yeah. I
Yeah.
like that. This is not something I do. I'm not gonna pass judgment on other people's approach, but I've never ended it. I've never ended an interview.
And why do you
I've never
think it's
really.
not even without judgment to others, why do you think it's not the right approach?
Well, let me actually create it. Let me separate.
Okay.
If I'm thinking about it's the founder, like it's like a final round, it's a late round interview. There's a 0% chance I will ever end that early, just to respect. Like this person put a lot of time, effort, and energy into where they got in our process, and there's a responsibility associated with that. Well, I will not, I will let them give them the opportunity to share and have a full conversation with me. I'll draw a distinction from like we're still a scaling startup. So I take first interviews for certain roles if I'm helping with sourcing. And so if in an early role, like in a screen or an early conversation, it's just evident that what the person's looking for is different from what we can offer, like kind of those sorts of things, then I'll sort of just say, hey, you know, based on what you shared, like the role's a little bit more like this, or we're like this size, or if there's just something where foundationally it's not going to be the best fit, I honestly, it's like it's equally respecting. It's like, I'm going to save you the time. I'm not sure this is going to be the best fit, because it sounds like, I don't know, you want to manage a really big team and that's really important to you. We don't really have a team for you to manage in this role for a while. And so if that's really, really important, like this may not be the best time for this. And so in that case, I'll give them the escape hatch on the conversation, because, it's kind of not a great use of either time. And your actual question was not that. Your actual question was what went wrong in the first 5 minutes of a people leader interview. I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong.
I'm not asking for personal reasons. Don't worry, Roxanne.
It's hard. The first 5 minutes is an interesting one, because the first 5 minutes, I've like introed myself probably. Like usually it's a founder interview and I'm like, we use BrightHire, so I know a lot about you. You don't have to do a whole intro, but let me tell you, let me just like, I can introduce myself, give you a little bit about me. So I probably have just finished doing that and done pleasantries.
I think let's assume it's more like 5 minutes of the people leader was starting. Okay. He was starting to get into it. Yeah.
I'm saying this very literal.
Yeah. just for argument's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we can go back. I think one example would be, how they've operated in a previous environment, and as a people leader, that's also a really tough job, and you have to be really level-headed, and you're managing the human side of a business, and that's like the most complex and unpredictable part. And so if they're disparaging their previous, company or leaders like that early in the conversation, or they're not taking ownership, or they just give you the sense that they don't have the demeanor to be this like rock, in the company, because there's gonna be a lot of ups and downs, and a people leader is generally on the front lines of a lot of those. That would probably be something where I'd say, I'm not sure that this is going to be the best fit. Obviously there's some like outlandish things I could think of, but I think that would be one where it would be very clear very, very quickly that, just the demeanor in terms of how they approach past, issues might not be the best fit.
Roxanne, what's your take? Because I remember you interviewed quite a few people when you were interviewing for my role, and I know there were many that obviously didn't work out.
Yeah. I think, well, when I'm with you that like, at this, like, what we're talking about, I've never ended them early, and I've heard, like, I always get a little conflicted on the call, because it's like, it is uncomfortable. You're just like, I know this isn't a fit, but like, here we are. But, anyway, that's also where I've landed, is that we just continue the conversation.
For the record, though, I like what Ben did, and I've done that too. Like, if 5 minutes in, I can tell it's not.
I think you're right. If there's a fundamental mismatch, right? Like comp, scope, or even just like they like kind of misunderstand what you do or something, that I agree. But I feel like that's usually not the scenario of like, you're hiring a people leader. Like I feel like at that point they've, things have been, but yes, I completely agree that I think it's like a total waste if they're just like, here's my great dream, and you're just like, oh, what? Like,
and by the way, I have found, maybe not the people leader level, maybe a more junior level, sometimes when you say the thing like, hey, it doesn't sound like we're aligned, you learn that they were just saying what they thought you wanted to hear. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I'm okay with that too, actually. And that's maybe its own red flag, but at least then you can like have a conversation like, oh, I've misunderstood, or like, oh, okay. Yeah, like that also something I'm open to considering. So I just find that at a minimum, it opens the door to have a more honest conversation than just deciding in your head and then, writing it off and not saying anything.
We saw that you made HBR, big deal. Also, Melanie and I are Harvard alums, so this is, sort of our favorite publication, even though I think it has literally nothing to do with the undergraduate institution. But it seems like a big deal, and if I had an office, I would put a copy of it in the front waiting area. And it's about like the effectiveness of interviews, and I feel like this has just been like a thing that is like, I feel like all leaders consider themselves a good judge of character, right? Because it's like, if you're like, I'm a bad judge of character, it's like, well, you should probably like not be hiring or evaluating or whatever. And yet then you see like research paper after research paper that's like, turns out people are terrible at this, and like all sorts of biases, and what you eat for breakfast impacts your decisions. And so like, I guess like what, if you're coaching someone to be better at interviewing, what are a couple, like, where's your 80-20? Where's your like, here's the one thing that would make you much better? And then the second question is, I tagged Melanie, not in a podcast, in a LinkedIn post from Ethan Mollick about, and I didn't dig into it, but let's just assume I got the details high level right, AI hiring. And the claim was that for call centers, I don't know if you saw this study, that it was better as judged by like metrics like 6 months into the job or something, you know? And
Yep.
so like basically, do you think that like humans are so flawed that it will actually just ultimately be all AI? Just a really small question to end on.
Yeah, on the first piece, so the kind of the core of the study looked at, essentially a job description is an advertisement to candidates about what is required and important for the role, and it kind of ends up becoming a filter for sort of who opts in, who opts out. And so the core question was, well, is that actually what matters ultimately in the interview process? Basically, like, are the things that are evaluated in the interviews how tied to the actual requirements that were advertised to the candidate are they? And then measuring things like, are certain things covered more or less or redundantly. And so the TLDR was at the very surface level, it's a decent amount of the of skills, competencies, requirements for a role in the job description are ultimately covered. But if you dig in and look at like the level of depth, like a much smaller percentage of the actual requirements are ultimately covered. There's a fair amount of redundancy in what's covered because it's like a bunch of handoffs. I mean, this is like why our whole product exists, and more or less. And but one of the conclusions is like there's some really low hanging fruit, and that's one of the things that like gets us so excited about BrightHire. It's like there's actually a lot of low hanging fruit to just do this better. So one thing was if if a question was actually explicitly asked about a requirement or a competency, it was not surprisingly covered in way more depth. And so like bottomed out versus if it was just discussed, it tended to be very surface level. So the implication
Hmm.
is like structured hiring, like know what you're looking for and have structured interview plans and actually have people follow those plans and ask questions about the things that you think are important because you will cover everything. You won't be redundant and you'll actually get a level of depth and you'll just get much better context. And if you don't do that, you're gonna not cover
Are
very
people
many of the
really still not doing structured interviews?
yes, not because it's not like there's some element that's like I want to just take a vibe check. A lot of it's just operational. It's hard to actually operationally do it. You got to build structure for every job. Make it domain specific. Then it's got to actually show up. Then people actually have to like know what to follow. I mean, this is a little bit what we do. Is kind of making it easy to be great at hiring, but that's like as much of the gap. It's not just like people don't believe in it. It's like operationally, it's actually a challenge. And then people are not generally trained to interview, and so they're trying to manage the conversation, and they're trying to like hit what they're trying to hit. And so there's just like the execution is not great as well. So
Are there
that's the
trends
low.
in
Yeah.
are there trends in like who you're seeing does have structured interviews and who doesn't? Like smaller companies, larger companies, this industry, that industry.
That is a very good question.
I'd put VCs in the bucket if it does not have structured interviews. I mean, I guess. No, just because I
Yeah.
think it's like even pitches, right? Like, I mean, like I know they say they're structured, but like, it doesn't. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, structured hiring, like tech, professional service, kind of like knowledge industries. I'd say I'd probably see it a bit more in the upper SMB to mid market than enterprise. Enterprise, it's more an operational challenge. It's like very clunky and manual to like figure out who should cover what, and then like they're emailing like Word documents or Excel files to people to try to like tell them what to cover. Like there's not a again, this is like why we exist, but there's no system that operationalizes it at scale like very fluidly, and so it tends to be like high talent bar knowledge companies are probably the most structured. And then there's probably some high volume hiring where it's structured, but the interview process is quite short in those cases.
I wouldn't be
Um,
surprised if there were even some differences across teams because I just find culturally, right? Like
Hmm.
a commercial
mhm.
team interview might be more vibey, you know, like I just know I can pick up if someone's a
That's
good
facts.
salesperson, right?
Yes,
Right.
facts.
Whereas like
Yeah.
an engineer, anyone in product land, I have found you had mentioned that you're more on the product side too, right? Is that right? Like more
Yeah.
more literal, very structured, very like what is the process? We must follow the process.
I have there's probably two reasons for that, or at least two that, I think one is just more data driven, kind of personalities. But the other one is actually slightly different, which is uh, when you're on a product person or an engineer, it really matters for your day to day quality of life, the talent of the people around you, versus like
Hmm.
if you're in sales, you're kind of like a lone wolf. And so engineers are super conscious of the talent of the people around them in a way that like a salesperson isn't. It doesn't like hurt their day if another salesperson on the team isn't as great. It's not, that's not that they're not looking for that, but on a day-to-day basis, the job is more engaging and fun and interesting, in an engineering capacity. If everyone else is has a really high bar, you're learning from people, you're collaborating. And so I think that's another reason that they tend to be a bit more structured and take it more seriously.
And then given AI or machines, I guess automation is the most structured of all. Is AI coming for all of our, is AI going to be the future of all of our hiring? Is that where we're going?
Yes and no. AI is going to be a part of all hiring in the future in a bunch of different capacities, but the future of hiring isn't going to be all AI. So a good example is actually the case study you mentioned, if you juxtapose that against the research we just did, right? Like the AI is going to know the most important qualifications and it's going to cover them 100% of the time. And so whether that's just the first conversation where we're really, really determining up front for the most important things, we're gathering more information to make sure that everyone's gonna be the best fit going forward, or that's happening elsewhere in the process, it's certainly much more consistent and it's gonna gather the information. It's like college admissions going from before the SATs to the SATs. A really, really long time ago, it was I'm gonna have lunch with this wealthy alumnus and Cambridge
and Yale,
and and they're gonna they're gonna vibe check me at lunch and see if we join are members of the same
at the club,
social clubs, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually it was no, we're gonna do the SATs, we're gonna standardize it, and that's gonna become a really important factor. And I kind of view the introduction of I view some of the that capability.
That's an interesting analogy.
Yeah, I view it as a very efficient way to gather more information about candidates very consistently, to then ultimately make sure there's a better match on both sides and make the rest of the process much more efficient. But I think ultimately people want to meet their future colleagues and vice versa. And there's a really, really important, there's a bunch of really important aspects to that.
That's cool. I can live in that future. That doesn't stress me out too much.
That was saying what you wanted to hear, because I didn't want to stress you out. No.
Right. Yes. Because the future always bends to my will. So yeah.
Is that what people do for CEOs? Just tell them what they want to hear? I don't know. I've heard of that.
Right. Good point.
Not in my company, but
Or mine.
No, definitely not.
You guys are always pushing back.
Roxanne, we're constantly trolling you. We have a thing. Nobody wants to have lunch with
I get no
Roxanne.
respect.
Yeah, I don't. Have you had lunch with anyone yet, Roxanne? Has anybody accepted?
It's a
your
great
invite?
dream of mine that one day someone will have lunch with me.
Come to Jersey. I'll have lunch with you.
Ben, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was really fun and informative, and I just appreciate you kind of rolling with our somewhat stressful but mostly chill questions.
No, my pleasure. And you kind of put me on my heels a little bit with some of those questions. So hopefully, I don't know.
Melanie's
and to the conversation, it'll be midnight tonight, and I'm going to be replaying this conversation in my mind, being what could I have dinner? What could I have differently? It's going to be my whole night. So
just means we'll have to do a part 2. Maybe
yes.
redeem yourself.
Sold. Love to.
Awesome.
I've been waiting my whole life to say this. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us on LinkedIn, because that's the only social media platform where we hang out.